Stephanie Apstein's latest, Cal Raleigh is carrying the Mariners with glute force, is available to read now from Sports Illustrated, and she joins us right now on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook hotline to talk about her story. Stephanie, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. It's going well, thanks. How are you?
Great, and we are happy to have you. Cal's been an unbelievable story this year. I know you talked with a lot of people about Cal, and there are other parts of the story I want to get to, but I think I want to start at the very, very beginning. I can guess why you'd want to write the story, right? A big story in baseball, but what in particular were you curious to find out? Like, what was kind of the intention behind it to start?
Well, I think as we talked about it, we joked we couldn't exactly say we had discovered Cal Raleigh in August of 2025, but I think what was interesting to SI in general and to me in particular is his life has really sort of blown up over the last year or so, 2 years. And from what I understood about him going in, and it turned out to be true, he's not really a guy who he didn't get into this to be famous. You know, some people really thrive with the fame, and he's not really one of them. And so I was curious to know how a person who's in the most selfless position manages the fact that everybody only wants to talk about him. And as it turns out, he's not crazy about that fact.
What's the most impressive thing? I know you might have mentioned it in your response there, but what's the most impressive thing you learned about Cal just outside of actually playing baseball?
I think, some of this is almost a caricature, but he's still driving. His parents had to talk him out of buying a used car. They were like, you can afford a big car, a new car. He's taking, the team teases him because he's still taking Uber X. And they're like, again, man, you signed for $100 million. You can afford Uber Black. So I think some of that is funny. We hear that. That's a stereotype of some athletes. But I think in this case, it actually reflects something about who Cal tries to be, who he sort of understands himself to be as a person and how he wants to live and behave. And I think his teammates love it.
I learned something from this story and then had to confirm with Mariners PR, and it was the nuts of the game. Again, your words, what it's called.
Their words.
I didn't know. Everyone knows about the Trident. Everyone knows about random stuff about the team. I didn't know about the nuts of the game. And what I liked finding out is that Cal gives the award out, so he's rarely the one actually winning it. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, I was kind of laughed because I didn't know about them either. I saw them in George Kirby's locker after a win in Baltimore. And I texted some other writers and I was like, do we know that the Mariners hand out gold testicles to the best player of the game? And they were like, oh, I didn't know that. I had to Google Mariners gold testicles, which was probably weird for anyone behind me. Just to make sure. But yeah, it makes sense, right? It's the guy who's got the most intestinal fortitude of the game. But I was kind of asking about it, and it emerged that Cal is the one who gives them out, which means that he, because of who he is, never receives them, which is so funny because basically every night Cal is the player of the game. But he's only gotten them once or twice, and only when his teammates refuse to accept them. And that, I think, is also pretty standard Cal. That's what I came to sort of understand. This is who this guy is. He doesn't like the spotlight. When he talked to me about it, he was like, basically sometimes there's a reliever who keeps the game in check long enough to let me hit a game-winning home run, and that guy should be recognized. And it's like, all right, man, I think MVP voters maybe see it differently, but they love it. He really, if this is an act, it's an incredibly good one. I think he really does believe that he sees himself as a guy who's sort of in the background, and I think he thinks that is what the team needs, and he's been right.
Do we know how long this award has been circling the clubhouse? Is it this year? Is it something new, or has this been going on?
My understanding is this year.
Okay, perfect.
That Cal and his dad talked about his goals for the year, and everybody's talking about the home runs and the shutouts caught and whatever, but for him, he really wanted to be more of a leader. I think he looked around the team and he felt like it was starting to be his time. And so one of the ways he wanted to lead was he wanted to make sure that everybody felt recognized and that they celebrated every one of the wins. Because you hear, I'm saying this a lot, but it's true. It's really hard to win a game. And so he wanted to celebrate every win.
Was there any like quote, interaction, a note that just kind of was left on the cutting room floor where you're like, it wasn't quite fit for the story, but it's something that maybe you just remembered from your conversations with Cal? Or I know you talked to, obviously, his dad and Logan and a couple other people around him.
Yeah, one thing actually that I thought was kind of interesting that didn't make it in there is that Cal has really had a resurgence since he started doing this drill that Edgar Martinez suggested to him, where they put the tee so far back that it forces him to swing up on the ball, and so he doesn't drop down. And he started doing that in spring training, and he's been very successful since. And around the All-Star break, Julio Rodriguez was like, "Hey, man, what are you doing in the cage, by the way?" And Cal showed him the drill, and Julio started doing it. And we've seen what Julio has done in the second half. So I thought that was kind of cool that you're seeing his impact all over the place.
Going off of what I think I know of Cal and how you've explained what you know of Cal, I might know the answer to this, but how focused is Cal on all of the accolades that he's accomplished so far this year and what maybe is soon to come?
I think he couldn't frankly be less interested in the stuff that is related to him only. People are sort of having to beg him to do some of the appearances that he's been asked to do, some of the media. They're kind of trying to remind him, this could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. You should take it. But even doing the home run derby, it wasn't really about him. He was telling people beforehand that he only wanted to do it because his dad could pitch and his brother could catch, that he wasn't, he said he didn't care if he hit a single home run, that he just wanted to give them that experience. And I think some of that comes from being the son of a coach, that he has seen his whole life that the way to make a team great is to focus on the team rather than yourself. And I think part of that is the kind of person he is naturally. Part of that is being a catcher, but it all combines to create this person who is really not really focused on what he is doing except as how that helps the team.
Cal may be entirely uninterested in the home run chase. I am very interested and very eager to see how far it goes. And I think in part, Stephanie, to me, why we loved your column and why just the story of Cal's season is really fascinating is that it has challenged my own way of thinking when it comes to team value, catcher impact, what a catcher could be capable of. And everyone loves baseball stories where you got, an everyman who becomes a hero. And those are just fun to watch in general. But you have the benefit of talking with a lot of national voices and people around baseball. Do you find other people kind of maybe changing the way that they think about MVP or those kinds of contributions?
Yeah, I think you've seen... this has been happening over years. I don't want to attribute it solely to Cal, but with the batting average that he's putting up, that's not a standard MVP candidate. But I think people are starting to realize that there's a lot more that goes into the performance that he's having. And I also think that people are having maybe a different reaction to what he's doing for this fan base. I was talking to a couple of writers the other day about the American League. What's the matchup we expect that Fox would be rooting for because Fox has the American League in the playoffs this year. And obviously they're going to want the Red Sox and the Yankees, but we actually think that probably the third most fun national storyline is the Mariners, because it's a town that is so invested in this team, a team that hasn't won, that's got a bunch of really fun stars. The ballpark's going to be rocking. I think the energy that he and the team are bringing to the city is really cool to see.
It is, and it's something that I think the city needs, right, with the struggles that the Seahawks have had and then the Mariners as well. We desperately need
this. You guys have earned a good baseball team.
I think so.
For real. Say it again.
Thank you, Stephanie.
When you look at just the race for the AL West, I gave up a few weeks ago. Not gave up, but I started to just focus on the wild card. Now I'm back in the AL race. Just how do you see this whole thing shaping up, and what do you think of the Astros and everyone else that's competing for this?
I've watched too many Astros games down the stretch in October to ever count the Astros out. But I think this. I really think that this Mariners team has something. I think that they even with the injuries, they've really got the pitching. This young core on the hitting side is really dynamic. I think I can't say that I think they're going to win the division necessarily, but I do think that this team will make some noise no matter how they get into the postseason. And I think this is a team that is actually equipped if they have to play a wild card series. It's a team that's probably equipped to make it out of it.
I started thinking when we were talking about, or you mentioned like this is a team that's been long suffering. I was thinking it's also a team where fans have really felt pained over maybe a lack of moves or wanting to see more spending. And I remembered that part of your story was also talking about Cal having that meeting with Dipoto and Hollander. And while we've read about that, I hadn't previously seen that he had like texted after the Naylor trade to say like A++. I'm sure you've obviously covered lots of different stories around baseball. How common is it for some players to be in that kind of role with that kind of freedom of expression maybe, or ability to advocate for themselves or the team when it comes to conversations with the GM?
It's a great question. I think you would hope that your stars would be that invested, but a lot of them are not, and especially at this young an age, I think that's pretty unusual. I think the fact that Jerry goes in there and asks Cal if he's thinking about acquiring a player, because Cal either knows the guy himself or has an opinion on him from playing against him, I think that's pretty cool. And that level of detail, it's unusual enough that you can kind of name the other players who are like that. Like I said, Jerry told me that, and I was like, oh, he sounds kind of like Zach Greinke. And it was like, yes, exactly. And Greinke used to, go scout the team's prospects. He used to be scouting high schoolers. Like, that's an unusual level of dedication. And as I said, it's unusual enough that you can make the comp to other players who do that sort of thing.
How much time or how impressive is Cal's preparation? I think we've heard Dan talk about the meetings prior to each game and all the work that he puts in. Does he go above and beyond, or is it standard practice when it comes to the catcher position?
I mean, the catcher position these days does require a lot of work. I think switch hitting also, he probably doesn't get quite enough credit for how much work that takes, that everything he does, he has to do twice. And I think, too, that he's been doing this forever. I mean, Jerry told me a story about he was with Modesto, in the minors, and he showed up one day, and Cal's not playing that day, but he's sitting on a baseball, like a bucket of balls, and he's charting Logan Gilbert's pitches. And Jerry asked the pitching coach, like, why do you have him doing that? And they were like, we don't have him doing that. He just does that. And Cal explained that he wanted to understand how Gilbert saw himself as a pitcher, and so that he could use what he understood of that to call games in the future. And the team was so impressed that now all of their young catchers chart in the minor leagues. They thought it was such a good idea. So I think the literal amount of time that he spends on meetings is maybe probably on the higher end of standard. That a lot of catchers are doing a lot of work, but I think the amount of himself that he puts into it is fairly unusual, and it helps that he's been around these guys so many. I mean, we joke about how many trades Jerry makes, but it's true that most of the core has been there his whole career now, and he really deeply understands these guys. He sort of talks to them about how they view their careers. He wants Luis Castillo, like, none of these guys shake. Basically, they think that Cal has put in so much work that they think Andres Munoz was like, I never have a better idea than Cal does. He's always thought about it more than I have. And I think that is a level of faith and confidence that you don't always see in such a young catcher.
All right, last one for you here. And much like Bump, I want to take a broader look at the American League. We're so used to, for the last couple of years, a pretty tight race in the AL West. But we've been having conversations all year, particularly with national folks, about how the American League as a whole just feels a little more unpredictable this year. Is that how it feels to you? And
Definitely.
Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of the teams, I think there's been a lot of injuries. Like, you might have expected the Yankees to take off, and then they lose Garrett Cole. I think that a lot of teams got hit pretty early. But I think that you're also seeing some of this is the impact of the third wild card slot, that teams don't necessarily feel like they have to try to win 95 games when winning 85 will get you there. So you're seeing fewer super teams. There's also a lot of problems with, as I'm sure you guys are familiar with, the local TV rights holder disputes, and that there is somewhat less money, but there's also a lot less uncertainty about how much money there will be. And so I think some teams are reluctant to spend. And I think, we're coming up on a new CBA. I think there's just a little bit of uncertainty. And so no one is quite people are less willing to be the one to fork over a ton of money for a free agent. And it turns out that typically, as Cal has said, spending sometimes is the name of the game. That's how you get the good players. And so the good players are a little more evenly distributed right now because there are fewer teams willing to just scoop everybody up.
Cal Raleigh is carrying the Mariners with Glute Force, available now from Sports Illustrated, sportsillustrated.com. She is Stephanie Apstein. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me.